What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your co-host Donovan Quick, and today we're going to be going over my prediction for the 53-man roster. I know we already had a couple of cuts with Mike White and Jody Fortson. Now, given I did predict Mike White was going to be cut, he was going to lose the position to Skylar Thompson. Now, it was behind some false pretenses. I did say that there was a rule that play of his ligament snapping in his knee was just brutal, so I don't advise you to watch that. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and jump into the rest of my 53-man roster prediction. I will have some visuals for you. Shout out Jacob for making the visuals for me. Yeah, let's get right into it, all right, so obviously Tua and Skylar are going to be our 1 and 2 at quarterback. We run down to running back. It's going to be Mostert, Achane. Jalen Wright is going to take over the 3 spot. Hefe Wilson is going to be your 4th. And I have Chris Brooks making this roster. And personally, I don't want Wilson on this team, really. I'm okay with riding with four running backs. Jeff, he's just always hurt. He is a good running back, but when he's your 4th running back and you need to have someone there that you're going to rely on, in case one of the other 3 go down, then I want someone that's going to be reliable, and he's just not reliable to stay on the field. He gets injured in practice. That's not exactly someone I want there. I'm okay with trading him, plus he has a bigger contract as well. We could save some money by cutting him or trading him. So he's one that I have making the roster. He's making too much, I would say, to be cut. But personally, I think he's making too much to stay on this team. Wide receivers, we're going to roll with 5 wide receivers. This is where it's going to get fun because we got Hill, Waddle, Berrios, Malik Washington, and Eric Ezukama. Eric Ezukama being the last one to make it after, his injury situation. He was out most of training camp, came back, had a great preseason game too, then got injured again in practice, and is now week to week. Now, the reason this gets interesting is because I have Odell starting the year on the PUP. Now, it hasn't been announced just yet. We do have several other players starting the year on PUP. Isaiah Wynn, Bradley Chubb, Cameron Good, all starting the year on the PUP list. So they will not count towards the 53-man roster. We will carry them into the season, can activate them whenever. After 4 games, they have to miss at least 4 games. Craycraft, I have starting the year on IR. He could be put on IR either today or tomorrow, and he won't count against the 53-man roster and can return after 4 games. And that's what it seems like what's going to happen, he had a great offseason, just happened to get hurt on that touchdown pass from Tua in the end zone in the second preseason game. And it sucks for him. It is what it is, though, and we have some guys that can fill his role. Meanwhile, may not be as effective as him, but could be there nonetheless. And so I have us rolling with 5 because right now I don't even know who we would pick up as a 6th. There's no one below him. Braylon Sanders is probably the next best because you already have Willie Snead and Anthony Schwartz on season-ending IR. Actually, we released Snead with an injury settlement, so he technically could re-sign at any point. But then, he's probably not. And, yeah, it looks like it's Braylon Sanders is not going to make this team. He hasn't. He's going to be a lifer on the practice squad. He's, good enough to be on the practice squad, not good enough to make the roster, if that makes sense, Tight ends. I have Smythe, Jonnu, and Hill in that order. Julian Hill, not Jonnu Hill. Julian Hill is going to be the 3rd. Very surprising guy, undrafted free agent out of Campbell. No one really talks about him. Very effective in both the run game, and he can move a little bit in the pass game as well. So I really like to have him there in that 3 spot. Mike McDaniel agrees with me. Durham Smythe, I think he's just going to out-snap Jonnu. That's why I have him ahead of him on the depth chart. And then, of course, you got good old Alec Ingold as our fullback. I'm going to go ahead and... All right, so now on to the offensive and defensive lines. Also, where it gets interesting a little bit, offensive tackle, you're going to have up here, you're going to have Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson, Kendall Lamb, and Patrick Paul. Those are going to be the 4 regardless. Keon Smith might have made his way in there, but not really. Then you also have Liam Eichenberg is going to be your starter at either guard or center to begin the season, because Aaron Brewer, he's going to make the roster. He might not play for week 1, maybe even week 2, so on and so forth. He's your starting center. Rob Jones, starting left guard until Isaiah Wynn comes back, or if he plays good enough, he might get the role. Lester Cotton, he's the direct backup guard. So he'll cover, wherever, whenever. He's going to be our starting right guard to begin the season. Then you have Jack Driscoll, who can move all across the interior as well. He did have a highlight play in the Tampa Bay game, getting put on his absolute behind by Vita Vea. But, he's our third string center who's never played center before this offseason, and Vita Vea is one of the best defensive tackles, if not the best defensive tackle in the entire NFL. So I can't really blame him for being put on his behind. Defensive line is where it really, really gets interesting. And then you have cornerbacks as well a little bit later. But you have, obviously, Calais Campbell, Zach Sealer are your 2 main starters. And then I'm going to go ahead and only throw Benito Jones and Brandon Peely in there. Benito and Peely are both banged up right now. I'm also going to throw Deshaun Hand in there. Deshaun Hand, look, he's not even the favorite by most reporters to make the roster over some other guys like Isaiah Mack and Johnson. I'm forgetting his first name right now. But Johnson and Isaiah Mack are 2 guys that have been favored over Deshaun Hand. But I just feel like he's always being praised by the players and the coaching staff. And I kind of listen to the locker room a little bit more in that sense. When you have guys that are praising hard work, and he was here last year for a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and give the slight edge to Deshaun Hand. It is a very, very close battle. Basically, the only 3 that are locked up there are Campbell, Sealer, and Benito Jones. Peely isn't even a lock to make the roster, because if you look at the first depth chart, Peely was one of the last defensive linemen. You look at the second depth chart, Peely was one of the first defensive linemen. He was, I believe, the first official backup on the second depth chart. So it's really hard to tell where they're judging these guys. It's just how close they all are. Then you have outside linebacker. Obviously, this is going to be your edge guys, the guys that just absolute dogs. Phillips, Chop Robinson, Muhammad Kamara, Emmanuel Ogbah, and then Quinton Bell. Quinton Bell has been a guy that's been really nice to see in camp. He has slowed down his progression a little bit, but it's not anything to be too worried about. Look, this guy is just an absolute animal athletically. He'll figure it out, hard worker, and he's going to be probably our 4th guy starting the year, because I doubt Phillips actually starts the year unless he's going to be on a heavy snap count. I expect Quinton Bell to be more involved than Phillips early on. But yeah, he's going to be almost your last string edge rusher. I'd be more worried with how Muhammad Kamara and Chop Robinson kind of pan out there. All right, now on to the middle linebackers. I do have David Long, Jordan Brooks, Duke Riley, Anthony Walker, and Channing Tindall all making the roster. Now, in this order, this is what I have starter-wise. Obviously, David Long, Jordan Brooks first. Anthony Walker is actually better than Duke Riley, but Duke Riley actually being in the building, being healthy, he's going to take the 3rd spot. Tindall makes the last spot. He's not even a lock to make roster. A lot of people actually don't have him making the roster, but honestly, after his performance against Tampa Bay, dude racked up 10 tackles, 10 solo tackles by the mid-3rd quarter. He was an absolute animal, and he has just progressed really nicely this preseason. I don't know if maybe it's a new coaching staff on defensive side, but something's just unlocked in that man. You're seeing his speed and tackling ability. That is the reason he was a 3rd-round pick out of Georgia. So I have him making the last spot on the middle linebackers. Corners. The the reason I told you all to wait for corners. As you can see, there's someone missing here. Who is that someone? Cam Smith. So I have Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, Kader Kohu, Nick Needham, Evan Neal, and Ethan Bonner all making the roster. I have Cam Smith. Now look, Cam Smith is not being cut. Cam Smith is going to begin the year on IR. So he does not count towards the 53-man roster. So he's dealing with that hamstring injury. And honestly, I think if you're the Dolphins mentality here, it's, would you rather cut Needham or Bonner and keep Cam Smith, or let Cam Smith get right? Put him on IR, get his hamstring right, then bring him back later on. And if you need to cut one of these guys, you cut one of them. It just is what it is. It's the name of the game. But honestly, Needham, he had a real quiet preseason, but for a good reason. And you didn't really see him out there at the end of the games when you had guys that were, actual bubble players fighting for their lives. You didn't really see him there. You saw Bonner, you saw Evan Neal, you saw Storm Duck, you saw Isaiah Johnson, and those guys are probably going to make the practice squad. I do have Bonner, who has been one of the most improved players this offseason. I do have him making the roster just because Cam Smith is going to be put on IR at the beginning of the year. In my personal opinion, that's what I think is going to happen. I think, you just let him get right. Now, that being said, I've now put 2 players on IR to begin the season with River Craycraft and Cam Smith. You're only allowed to put 2 players on roster or on IR that don't count against the 53-man roster that you can actually bring back for the season. So only 2 of the guys that we put on IR in the coming days, or today and tomorrow, can come back during the season. The rest, you're only limited to 2 of them. The rest are just going to be out for the season. It just is what it is. Safety, I do have Holland, Poyer, Marcus May, and then Elijah Campbell beating out rookie Patrick McMorris. I have Patrick McMorris actually going on IR as well, but he's going to be out for the season. Very similar to Taj Washington. It's your rookie draft pick. You don't want to give up on him, but it's a significant enough injury that he might miss some months, but you really don't want to be like, okay, or even some weeks, but you don't really want to let him go. You don't want to give other teams the opportunity to go and get him. You want to develop him in-house, keep him in-house, keep him developed, and just move on, right? Elijah Campbell made a statement this preseason. He's going to be, he's already your special teams ace along with Evan Neal. You're going to need those guys with the new dynamic kickoff. And, he showed up in coverage as well with hard hits. And then, of course, you got Jason Sanders, Jake Bailey, meh. And then you got Blake Ferguson to round out your special teams. Now, I do think if we want to go up to the middle linebackers up here, Anthony Walker, I had mentioned that he was dealing with injuries. Now, once the season begins, if he's put on IR, he can come back during the season. But you're only allowed 2. So I'm playing GM a little bit here with my predictions, right? So you're only allowed 2 players to come back from IR if you put them on before the 53-man or during the cuts, right? And those 2 players for me were Cam Smith, River Craycraft. You don't want to let those 2 go. So Anthony Walker, begin the season. So Wednesday, put him on IR. He's eligible to come back now. And then you go back and then you sign Tanner Connor. Now, if you look back at the first slide, I only had 3 tight ends here. The reason being is, those 3 are locks for the roster. However, receiver-wise, you're missing someone, right? You typically want to go into the season with 6 receivers. Tanner Connor is a receiver turned tight end. So he has that hybrid ability to do both. And he had an excellent preseason before getting injured. Not exactly sure the extent of his injury. He didn't play in the 2nd or 3rd preseason games. So not 100% sure what his availability is going to be to begin the season. But if he is good to go, if he's ready, out of all the Dolphin players that are on roster currently, he's probably the only one I would bring back onto roster as a skill position player, or even anyone else, honestly. Like, I can make an argument for maybe an extra edge rusher. I can make an argument to another defensive lineman, make it a little bit more, depth, rather than having 5, get 6 in there. But honestly, we're really lacking here in skill position. So we have technically a total of like 6 running backs, right? Because you got Mostert, Achane, Wright, Wilson, Brooks, that's 5. Then you have Ingold, that's 6, right? Then you only have 3 tight ends. That's not a lot. A lot of teams carry 3 to 4. You have wide receivers, 5. A lot of teams carry 6. I would feel more comfortable bringing back Tanner Conner and putting him in that spot. That is my prediction, and that's what I got for y'all today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm losing my mind? It could be anything, really, honestly. Just let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Deuces.